So, there was an interesting bit of radio going around after the Brazilian Grand Prix. Now, I actually heard this after the race concluded. I didn't actually hear it at the time when it was being said. Someone highlighted it to me in one of the groups, and then a few other people were talking about it as well that I'm in, and I'm just like, no, that can't be right. That must have been misinterpreted. But it doesn't seem to be the case, and this all revolves around Sir Lewis Hamilton after what was a pretty poor weekend in Brazil for him, let's be honest here. He was really bad, especially compared to his teammate George Russell, who was far further up the order. Brazil being a track where Hamilton, people say he's amazing around Brazil. He did have that amazing drive in 2021, of course, but only winning here 3 times, which by his standards is pretty low. Let's not get away from that. Anyway, I'm digressing. He is the closest thing to a Brazilian driver on the grid. He's an honorary citizen of Brazil, and he's absolutely loved by the people there, and at least he got to drive Ayrton Senna's, was it 1990 McLaren? I know it was one of his title-winning McLarens, but either way, driving that thing around Interlagos, dream come true. Incredible footage of him just going around the track, waving the Brazilian flag as he did so. Impressive to drive the thing one-handed, even at a slow speed, I must admit. Very talented driver. Who would have guessed it? 7-time world champion, so talented. But, let's talk about this radio. Because apparently Hamilton was more than alluding to the fact that Brazil might be his last race for Mercedes. Now, of course, Hamilton is moving to Ferrari for next year. He's gone on a multi-year deal. He's going to try and win Ferrari's first world championship in over 15 years at this point, and get back to winning his first world championship since the year 2020. But could he be going early, or at least leaving Mercedes early? Well, this radio message to Bono kind of alludes to that. Let me explain. Full article here on the F1 Chronicle as always, guys. So, Lewis Hamilton may have dropped a worrying hint about his immediate future in F1. 2024 has been somewhat awkward for the 7-time world champion, as he has faced the entire season knowing that he will leave Mercedes for Ferrari at the end of the year. It's a very awkward situation because you're basically working your notice. And from what I know about people who work in the notice, they don't care. They'll just turn up and do the bare minimum because they're leaving anyway. What's the point? Not that I'm saying that's the case for Lewis Hamilton. I'm not saying that at all, and it's not been the case at all. He's won 2 races this year. He's been excellent at times. There is no doubt about that. But the 39-year-old has struggled with Mercedes' volatile 2024 car, but his exasperation was never clearer than throughout the recent Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. Terrible, Hamilton said when asked about his Mercedes at Interlagos. You tell me, he told a reporter when asked, to explain what precisely is wrong with the silver W15. That's the $1 million question. If you can find the answer, I'll give you $1 million, the Brilliant Joes. He's definitely got $1 million. You could do that if you wanted. Verbal contracts are binding. If that press guy finds it. Qualifying was bad. The sprint was bad. The race was rubbish. Driving Ayrton Senna's car was the best thing of the weekend. It was always going to be, wasn't it? But it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad aside from that. Hamilton was among those who have complained about the recent bumpy ride and stiffness of the current ground effect era cars since 2022. But he said it hit a new low in Brazil. It's like a plank of wood. It's like no suspension, he said. Hopefully we won't have any more bumpy tracks. I think the last 3 aren't so bumpy, but yeah, it could happen. I could happily go on holiday. Of course, Brazil recently got resurfaced as well, and a few people have been complaining about the resurfacing. Fernando Alonso being one of them. The guy had his back hurting after this race as well, apparently. F1 still needs to travel to Las Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi to complete the season before Hamilton can exchange his black overalls for Ferrari ones in 2025. And despite rumours of him testing early in 2024 for the 25 season for Ferrari, Mercedes have barred him from doing so, which is a key factor in what we're about to talk about, I believe, because he's not going to get to suit up in red until literally the 1st of January 25. That's the earliest his contract will allow him to do it, I believe. He openly admitted he is now eagerly looking forward to next year, especially with Ferrari currently performing significantly better than Mercedes. I'm very interested in my future, of course, Hamilton said. In that respect, keeping an eye, watching everything that happens. And after crossing the line on Sunday, Hamilton, who is to be replaced by Kimi Antonelli for 25, hinted that Brazil might actually be his last race for Mercedes. That was a disaster of a weekend, guys, he told the team on the radio. That is the worst car the car has ever been. If this is the last time that I get to perform, it's a shame it wasn't great. I'm grateful for you. Interesting words. When asked about the final 3 race run at the end of the season, he told reporters, if they can give me a car that doesn't bounce in the next 3 races, maybe I can get a better result. But yes, I'm looking forward to Christmas. Many drivers, including 43-year-old Fernando Alonso, struggle with the excessive bumpiness of the newly resurfaced Interlagos track last weekend. Both, said Hamilton, when asked if his problems at the weekend were track or car related, but it's mainly the car. There was something wrong with it. It's so exhausting to have all these bad races in the second half of the season. The only thing I can say is that every time we start a weekend, we do our best, but this is unacceptable. It's not good enough. Hamilton suggested that he cannot realistically head to Las Vegas, Qatar or Abu Dhabi targeting victory. I'm going to focus on other things, he said. I am not fighting for the World Championships, so it doesn't really matter where I finish. I don't care if I'm in front or behind of George Russell. It makes no difference to me. Interesting words. Let's just go back to his direct quote here. So if this is the last time that I get to perform, it's a shame it wasn't great, but I'm grateful to you. Well, you can interpret those words a number of ways. You can interpret that as being, well, this might be my last time racing for Mercedes, so thank you, but goodbye. You could interpret it as, well, the car is so bad right now, I can't perform for you anymore for the rest of the season, maybe. That's how bad this is, which is an interesting thought. Now, you might think that this has something to do potentially with Antonelli coming into the team early, doing a couple races to get him kind of a head start on the 2025 season. Now, I would be very surprised if that's the case, in a number of ways. Now, Antonelli at the moment, I believe he was offered the Williams tried to loan him in for the rest of the 2024 season. Instead of eventually going for Franco Colapinto, Antonelli was higher up that shortlist. And the reason why Mercedes rejected that was because Antonelli has a very strict, prescribed kind of run up to the lead up to Formula 1. He's going to do some free practice sessions, simulator work, he's continuing his F2 stuff, and presumably also he'll also take part in the young drivers test in Abu Dhabi after the end of the F1 season. So then to fast track him in and bring him in just to do a couple races at the end of the season, if it goes badly, which, it could do. I'm not saying he's a bad driver, I think he's a great driver and I think he'll be a success, but he's still a very young kid, someone who's very inexperienced in motorsport in general, very inexperienced in F1 in particular, so it's a risk. It's a big risk. And it's also a risk in terms of like the cost cap, because if you have a crashed car, which I know Hamilton could crash the car too, of course, but Antonelli could also crash the car and is more likely to do so because he's a rookie. That's just a fact. So then there's the cost thing as well. The more they spend, the less they can spend. Well, the more they can spend on repairs, the less they can actually spend on upgrading the car for 25. And then, of course, there's the final one, which is the biggest factor of the lot here. This is Sir Lewis Hamilton. This is the most successful driver in the history of Formula 1. This is the most successful driver and team pairing, Hamilton and Mercedes, in the history of Formula 1. Nobody has raced more Grand Prix for one team in Formula 1 than Sir Lewis Hamilton. Nobody has won more championships for one team than Sir Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. Nobody has won more races, podiums, probably fastest laps as well. This is the most successful pairing in Formula 1 history, is Hamilton and Mercedes, and they have to give him a proper send-off in Abu Dhabi. Simple as that. I know he's not leaving Formula 1, but he's leading the team. Leaving them after, 12 years in the team. Taking them from mid-table, which is where they were in 2013. In 2012, they were even worse when he actually signed for them, to being the dominant force in Formula 1 for years at the start of the turbo hybrid era. So you have to give him a proper send-off. You can't let him go. I don't think Hamilton will be the kind of guy to just quit and give up. I think his emotions are running high. I think he's very disappointed. I think he's frustrated with how well George Russell's doing as well. And that is not a slight on George Russell, but I'll just weigh in on a little theory with this as well. And I don't think it's that controversial because, honestly, if I was Mercedes, I'd do the same thing. And this is going to hurt Hamilton fans to hear this. I know it will, but it's probably true. I think that car right now is designed around George Russell. Simple as that. I think it is. And the reasons for this, numerous. I mean, obviously Hamilton is going to Ferrari for the 2025 season, so there's no point designing a car around a guy who's not going to be there anymore. They've also had the entire season knowing that Hamilton is going to move to Ferrari, so it's not like it's a recent change. It's not like he's signed on in the summer or anything like that. They've literally had the entire season. They knew before pre-season testing started in 2024 that this guy's going to move on. So you're going to design the car around George Russell. Now, some people might say, oh, well, why don't they design it around Kimi Antonelli? Is he not the future of Mercedes? Yes, he is. But he might also not be. He could not be the driver that they think he is. And disappointing Formula One. And most importantly, he's not driving the car now, is he? So he can't offer his input on what he prefers. Maybe in the future, maybe the 25 car and the 26 car will be designed with Antonelli in mind, but the 25 car, and definitely the 24 car right now, in my opinion, is designed around George Russell. And that is why, by and large, George Russell recently has been doing better than Hamilton. That performance difference is becoming more and more. At the start of the 24 season, the car would have been mostly designed around Hamilton, you would probably say, running on from 23. But as the car gets more and more parts from George Russell's input, basically from his feedback, from his kind of driving preferences, which is a different driving style to Sir Lewis, that gap has increased. And I think we're seeing that now. So I think that's a big factor in it as well. But there we go, guys, a longer video. I love these longer discussions with you guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to them as well. I love talking about Formula One at the end of the day. And I don't think we've seen the last of Sir Lewis driving for Mercedes in Brazil personally, but it's interesting comments for sure, so you can definitely read a lot into it. What do you guys think? Is Hamilton going to quit early? Are we going to see Kimi Antonelli in the car in Las Vegas? Maybe in free practice, but probably not for the race, but we'll see what happens with that. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more F1 content like this. Guys, we're ramping up. We're approaching 5,000 subscribers. I'm loving the support you guys are giving. And we've got some more unconventional videos coming up this week as well. We've got mean comments and maybe another tier list as well if I get enough time for it. So yeah, stay tuned for that and a whole lot more on F1Chronicle.com. Have a good one, guys. See you later.